And welcome back. It is the Arvo Flow Sports Hour here on Flow FM, and we've got Eddie Dads from secplaybook.com.au joining us right off the back of the conclusion to the Super Bowl today, here to give us his raw reaction to all of it. I'm sure he's pretty happy with what he saw. Philadelphia Eagles losing to the Kansas City Chiefs 35-38. Eddie, let's get your reaction to it all.
Ellis, that was one of the best Super Bowls I've seen in recent memory anyway. It was high scoring, it was entertaining, it had fantastic performances on both sides of the ball. I thought Jalen Hurts was spectacular. I thought Patrick Mahomes was spectacular. The Chiefs deserved the win, don't get me wrong, but it's a shame to see a Super Bowl it might be overshadowed a little bit by that last second refereeing call in the dying minutes, which handed the Chiefs a crucial first down. I didn't personally agree that it was a penalty against the Eagles, but I'm sure that's going to be debated on Twitter and the other social media outlets over the coming days. But yeah, what a game. And Patrick Mahomes, you can't say enough about him, Ellis. He's basically on one leg at the moment. His ankle's clearly not right. He was fantastic. He's going to be the Super Bowl MVP. He's the MVP of the league. Ellis, he might end up going down as one of the greatest NFL players of all time. I know we've spoken a lot about Tom Brady in recent weeks on this call. But I really do think Patrick Mahomes has a chance to go past Tom Brady as the greatest NFL player of all time.
He's made the call. Well, I'm going to make a call too, and you might not agree with it, Eddie, but I just caught a glimpse of the final stages of that game. I got to say, when the scores were levelled, it was one of the only times ever in my life that American sport excited me. But... We'll park that there. There's a bit to talk about here about this event, though, the Super Bowl. Firstly, Nick Riewoldt getting on TV in the States. What was that about?
Amazing. I'm really happy for Nick Riewoldt. I think he's a brilliant AFL pundit. I think most people who watch AFL and Fox Footy will know that Nick Riewoldt is brilliant. He knows exactly what he's talking about at all times. His family, his wife's family, are based in America, so he's made the move back over to America. And it's strange seeing him pop up on some of the ESPN shows in the pregame, but I guess it's kind of relevant, right? Because Aaron Sipos was an ex-teammate of his. Of course, he's now the punter for the Philadelphia Eagles. So it was actually a good reason to have Nick Riewoldt on those pregame shows. But I mean, Ellis, I'm a huge Nick Riewoldt guy. Whatever he does, I'm happy to watch it. I want to give a huge shout out to. I think we may have spoken about him briefly on a few previous shows, but Jordan Mailata, who's one of the Eagles' offensive linemen. He's one of the best at his position in the league. He's an Australian. He was on the South Sydney Rabbitohs list briefly before being cut. His story, if you haven't read about it, is one of the great stories in world sport at the moment. I think he's basically come from no background whatsoever in American football to earning himself a $16 million a year contract. So he's doing incredibly well. The Eagles are going to be back around the mark in the Super Bowl discussions next year. So I'm sure we'll see him and Aaron Sipos, both Australians. We'll see them back there at some stage. But yeah, I mean, what an incredible event. What did you make of the halftime show, Ellis?
Yeah, it was interesting. A bit of a mixed reaction with Rihanna's performance, but I certainly thought she entertained the masses, Eddie.
I can't believe she has that many good songs. I mean, it's just banger after banger. She's got quite a catalogue of songs to go through at this point. I loved it. I'm an absolute sucker for the NFL Super Bowl halftime shows, Ellis. I can't get enough of them. I think honestly, I know we shouldn't compare the AFL and NRL shows to the might of the NFL, but it does make me a little embarrassed every now and then to see what sort of stuff we're putting up as compared to these guys in the States.
Hey, put some respect on Meatloaf's name. No, Eddie, I'm going to say it. I thought the weekend was better. But you know what? Good work, Rihanna. She did it all for free today, if you can believe that, folks. She won't earn a cent for her performance. So that's due to some contractual obligations. So there you go. Let's park the NFL, Eddie, for at least the next off-season. We'll move into some football chatter. Now, this was pretty bizarre. Rangers, they played Patrick Thistle in the Scottish Cup overnight, and the second-tier side, well, they had Rangers rattled during parts of the game, but a pretty ridiculous moment in this game, which had this scoreline been different, the manager might have had a few people coming after him, Eddie.
Yeah, this is a really, really interesting one. I don't know how often this happens in world soccer, to be honest, because as you know, I'm not the closest follower of soccer as a sport, but what's basically happened is it seems that one of the Rangers players went down with an injury. He then got up later in the same play, picked up the ball, ran around the unsuspecting goalkeeper and scored a goal. When some of the rest of the team were backing off and you know, he was injured, he was down, so the play was over, sort of thing. So not to the player's credit, I don't think he knew exactly what was going on. But it turns out that the Rangers boss in the second half basically gifted Patrick Thistle the equalising goal to bring them back to level terms. Does this happen often in soccer? I mean, this is a pretty bizarre circumstance, right?
I've actually never heard of it happening myself. I know that everyone's all for, fairness in play, and we always get the opposition side clapping when the team that shouldn't, restart the game with possession hands possession back over. But that's as far as you really see it go. I've never seen this happen. So it's a pretty ridiculous moment, but in the end it didn't matter. Rangers getting over the line, and it looks like we're going to get possibly another Celtic versus Rangers Old Firm Scottish Cup final, so we'll keep tabs on that. We will come home, Eddie, and talk about one of our home sides, but they're not having a great time of it over in the subcontinent, so let's just talk about the Australian cricket team. We know that they certainly have not performed well in their Indian tour, but they're not being helped by this little ruckus going on whereby they're trying to get as acclimatised as they can to what is an ordinary pitch, let's be quite frank. They're trying to sort of do the most they can within their scheduling to make sure that they put things right, Eddie, but it looks like they're not going to be helped by the authorities above them.
Oh, this is great, Alice. I was so glad that you wanted to talk about this cricket incident on this show today, because this is one of my favourite things going around at the moment. I want to say from the get-go, I absolutely love what India are doing over there. I'm a huge believer in Test cricket, and I want all. When you play part of the thing when you play Test cricket is that every condition that you play in is going to be different, and you can't rock up to India and expect to be able to play on a pitch that is like an Australian standard pitch. It's just not how it works. It's never been the case. The same when you go to England, you're going to get green tops that swing, and when you go to India, you're going to get dust bowls that spin. It's just it is what it is. There's absolutely no use in Australia complaining about the pitches. And this next step that India's gone to, it's just good gamesmanship in my opinion. So the Australians, they were obviously bundled out on the third day of the opening test in Nagpur. They wanted to keep practicing on the centre wicket overnight. Instead of letting them practice on it, the Indian groundskeeper have apparently watered the pitch, so essentially negating the dryness of the pitch, which was the thorn in Australia's side for that test match. So they're essentially depriving Australia of the ability to get better on a surface which they're already very bad at. So honestly, Alice, I love it. I don't think as Australians we can pretend that we don't do the same with our pitches. There's a reason why we never lose at the Gabba. It's always a green top. Our fast bowlers always perform well there. So I really do think we need to suck it up a little bit and get a little bit better at playing in these conditions. And maybe we need to create some of these conditions of our own at home so we can practice on them. I don't know if you saw any of the stories during the week, but we're cutting back on some of the academy cricket in Australia in terms of funding. So the only way we're going to get better at playing over in India is practicing like it, Ellis. I absolutely love the hijinks from the Indian cricketers and the groundskeepers at the moment, though. It's fantastic.
Eddie Dads goes whack. I just say the flow man might crash his car listening back to this one. Goodness me. We'll talk about the NRL and the 24-year-old Kalyn Ponga. He's come out and reassured everyone that his little incident with regards to some footage where he was captured leaving a toilet cubicle in a pub in Newcastle, well, there was nothing untoward about it, according to him. It was actually a bit of food poisoning. This is a pretty baffling one, Eddie, not something we read about every day. What did you make of this story?
Yeah, So the story is Ellis, Kalyn Ponga and one of his teammates. Kalyn Ponga is one of the stars of the Newcastle Knights in the NRL. During the off-season, him and a teammate were spotted looking a little bit worse for wear, coming out of a toilet cubicle. Had to be escorted out of there by the venue security by all accounts. Kalyn Ponga says he had food poisoning, which is why he was in the toilet and not looking so good. He's also had a few concussions through the year. So the journalists in the press conference with Kalyn Ponga were quick to point out that perhaps drinking wasn't a great idea while you had some concussion issues as well, which is quite a fair point. But yeah, I mean, this is a very interesting one. I think if you delve too deep into the facts here, you're probably going to come away with the suspicion that maybe all is not quite as it seems coming from Kalyn Ponga. But I'm not one to pass judgment, Ellis. What were your thoughts when you came across this story?
Well, all my thoughts were Eddie was at least he's come out and said it how it was, and we can all move on and hopefully talk about the action on the field. I just want to ask you before we go, Eddie, a bit of a war of words erupting between, well, a legend of one of your favourite sporting teams, the Essendon Footy Club, and as we get towards that AFL season, just want to know what your thoughts were on the Tim Watson controversy of the last week, and also how you're feeling ahead of the AFL season, because there's plenty of memes coming out online. Exciting times when we enter this kind of territory. It's such a long off season, as we know. A two-pronged sort of question there for you, Eddie. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, love the question first off, Ellis. Anything that gets me talking about the Bombers on this show is a good thing. In this particular situation, as we've discussed over the last sort of year or so, I'm not the most positive Bombers supporter at the moment, so I'm not all that surprised to see these sort of stories coming out. I mean, Tim Watson's feuding with James Hird, James Hird feuding with Brad Scott feuding with Kevin Sheedy. I mean, it's a whole rigmarole at the moment. I don't think the club is in a particularly stable position at the moment. These reports only make that more apparent. I think from board level down, there's some serious cleaning of house that probably needs to be done. I think we need to reset things, get away from whatever worked in the 2000s is not going to work in 2023. So I think we need to stop that way of thinking. I'm very happy with Brad Scott as the coach. I think he's very no nonsense. I'm happy with some of the moves he's made over the preseason. Honestly, the Essendon list is quite exciting at the moment. I think we've got some really good young players. I don't think we're a contender for the flag, but I'm excited to see where we go in terms of the AFL in general. I mean, how exciting is this time of year, Alice? Every club feels like a chance. We've got young players coming out of nowhere. You've got some good young talent over at the West Coast Eagles. Your boys looking to break through. So it's very exciting. I can't wait to talk AFL with you over the next few months or so. Are you feeling good about the Eagles spot going into the start of the season?
No, I'm not. But what I'll also say, Eddie, is that Brad Scott must have the easiest job in the world if he's making you this excited already when you look at his coaching record. Likewise, though, Eddie, I can't wait to talk about the football with you when it all comes back. It's been great getting your insights today here on the Arvo Flow Sports Hour. Enjoy the aftermath of the Super Bowl. I'm sure it's all going off there in Vancouver. Eddie, great to catch up with you again. We'll speak to you next week. That's Eddie Dads from scplaybook.com.au. You take care, Eddie.
Thanks, Ellis. Appreciate your time.